The Okavango Delta lies in the northwest of Botswana. Part of the Great East African Rift Valley system, the Okavango Delta is formed as the Okavango River flows into the Kalahari Desert from the Angolan highlands, creating a unique wetland, a huge oasis that sets the region's rhythm with its annual pulses. There is less than 2 meters variation in height across the entire 250-kilometer length of the delta. It is this almost complete absence of topographical relief that leads to the formation of the myriad waterways that make up the delta. The vast quantities of water flowing into an almost flat desert results in a maze of winding channels, oxbow lakes, islands, and floodplains. The water is finally stopped in its lugubrious progress by a fault line. It really is a landscape unlike any other. Approximately 11 cubic kilometers flow into the delta each year. The water flows continuously into the delta and drains the summer, January to February, rainfall from the Angolan highlands. A surge, that flows a staggering 1,200 kilometers in a month, occurs in Botswana between March and June. It is during this time that the Okavango Delta is at its largest. The high temperatures in the region cause rapid transpiration and evaporation, which results in a cycle of rising and falling water levels. As one of the only sources of water during the dry period, the Okavango Delta attracts thousands of animals and one of Africa's greatest concentrations of wildlife. The true miracle of this oasis in the desert is that the flood waters appear just when the rainy season has ended and water and food are becoming scarce in the region. The waters of the annual flood truly are waters of life, resulting in an extraordinary juxtaposition of a vibrant wetland in an arid landscape and the miraculous transformation of huge sandy, dry, and brown depressions by winter season floods triggers spectacular wildlife displays, large herds of African elephant, buffalo, red lequi, zebra, and other large animals splashing, playing, and drinking the clear waters of the Okavango, having survived the dry autumn season or their weeks-long migration across the Kalahari Desert. UNESCO. Once in the delta, water is lost to transpiration by plants, 60%, evaporation, 36%, percolation into aquifer system, 2%, and finally 2% flows out into Lake Ngami. The islands of the delta mostly start as termite mounds, 70%, and often have white patches in their center where the high salt content of the islands collects. This process causes the islands to become toxic and trees die off in the center. Sea formation, the islands of the Okavango. At the center of the delta is Chief's Island, the largest island in the delta. Chief's Island was formed by a fault line which uplifted a 70 x 15 kilometers wide area. Abundant in animal life, it was once reserved as a hunting area for the chief and now forms a safe respite for the resident wildlife when the waters rise. The Okavango Delta, or Okavango grassland, in Botswana is a vast inland delta formed where the Okavango River reaches a tectonic trough at an altitude of 930 to 1000 m in the central part of the Enderhike Basin of the Kalahari. It is a UNESCO World Heritage Site as one of the few interior delta systems that do not flow into a sea or ocean, with a wetland system that is largely intact. All the water reaching the delta is ultimately evaporated and transpired. Each year, about 11 cubic kilometers, 2.6 cu.m, of water spreads over the 6,000 to 15,000 square kilometers, 2,300 to 5,800 square miles, area. Some flood waters drain into Lake Ngami. The area was once part of Lake Makadikadai, an ancient lake that had mostly dried up by the early Holocene. The Mormi Game Reserve is on the eastern side of the delta. The delta was named one of the 7 natural wonders of Africa, which were officially declared on February 11, 2013 in Arusha, Tanzania. 7 On June 22, 2014, the Okavango Delta became the 1,000th site to be officially inscribed on the UNESCO World Heritage List. The Okavango is produced by seasonal flooding. The Okavango River drains the summer, January, February, rainfall from the Angola highlands, and the surge flows 1,200 kilometers 750 miles in around 1 month. The waters then spread over the 250 by 150 kilometers, 155 by 93 miles, area of the delta over the next 4 months, March, June. The high temperature of the delta causes rapid transpiration and evaporation, resulting in 3 cycles of rising and falling water levels that were not fully understood until the early 20th century. The flood peaks between June and August, during Botswana's dry winter months, when the delta swells to 3 times its permanent size, attracting animals from kilometers around and creating one of Africa's greatest concentrations of wildlife. The delta is very flat, with less than 2 meters 7 feet variation in height across its 15,000 square kilometers 5,800 square miles, while the water drops about 60 m from Mohembo to Mon. When the water levels gradually recede, water remains in major canals and riverbeds, in waterholes and in a number of larger lagoons, which then attract increasing numbers of animals. Photo safari camps and lodges are found near some of these lagoons. Among the larger lagoons are Dombo Hippo Pool, Kadikwi Lagoon, Guma Lagoon, Jer Lagoon/Hippo Pool, Monakairo Lagoon/Sausage Island, Monakairo Lagoon, Shinde Lagoon, Zakanaksa Lagoon, Hamu Lagoon, Hobiga Lagoon, Sugana Lagoon, Zibadiania Lagoon. The agglomeration of salt around plant roots leads to barren white patches in the center of many of the thousands of islands, which have become too salty to support plants, aside from the odd salt-resistant palm tree. Trees and grasses grow in the sand around the edges of the islands that have not become too salty yet. About 70% of the islands began as termite mounds, often macroterm species, where a tree then takes root on the mound of soil. Chief's Island, the largest island in the delta, was formed by a fault line which uplifted an area over 70 kilometers long, 43 miles, and 15 kilometers wide, 9.3 miles. Historically, it was reserved as an exclusive hunting area for the chief, but is now a protected area for wildlife. It now provides the core area for much of the resident wildlife when the waters rise. The delta's profuse greenery is not the result of a wet climate, rather, it is an oasis in an arid country. The average annual rainfall is 450 millimeters, 18 in, approximately one-third that of its Angolan catchment area, and most of it falls between December and March in the form of heavy afternoon thunderstorms. December to February are hot wet months with daytime temperatures as high as 40 degrees Celsius 104 degrees Fahrenheit, warm nights, and humidity levels fluctuating between 50 and 80%. From March to May, the temperature reduces, with a maximum of 30 degrees Celsius 86 degrees Fahrenheit during the day and mild to cool nights. The rains quickly dry up leading into the dry, cool winter months of June to August. Daytime temperatures at this time of year are mild to warm, but the temperature falls considerably after sunset. Nights can be cold in the delta, with temperatures barely above freezing. Frost is sometimes seen over the winter. The September to November span has the heat and atmospheric pressure build up once more, as the dry season slides into the rainy season. October is the most challenging month for visitors. Daytime temperatures often push past 40 degrees Celsius 104 degrees Fahrenheit and the dryness is only occasionally broken by a sudden cloudburst. The Okavango Delta is both a permanent and seasonal home to a wide variety of wildlife which is now a popular tourist attraction. All of the big 5 game animals, the lion, leopard, African buffalo, African bush elephant and rhinoceros, both black and white rhinoceros, are present. Other species include giraffe, blue wildebeest, plains zebra, hippopotamus, impala, common eland, greater kudu, sable antelope, roan antelope, puku, lekwi, waterbuck, sitadunga, tsesebe, cheetah, African wild dog, spotted hyena, black-backed jackal, caracal, serval, aardvark, aardwolf, bat-eared fox, African savanna hare, honey badger, crested porcupine, common warthog, chacma baboon, vervet monkey, and Nile crocodile. The delta also hosts over 400 bird species, including the helmeted guinea fowl, African fish eagle, Pell's fishing owl, Egyptian goose, South African shell duck, African jacana, African skimmer, marabou stork, crested crane, African spoonbill, African darter, southern ground hornbill, wattled crane, lilac-breasted roller, secretary bird, and common ostrich. 24 prime bird-watching areas are those with a mix of habitats such as the Panhandle, the seasonal delta and the parts of the Mormi Game Reserve that are close to the water. Since 2005, the protected area has been considered a lion conservation unit together with Wange National Park. In 1992, the black rhino was thought to be extinct in the Okavango Delta, while only 19 white rhinos remained. By 1993, all rhinos had been killed in Botswana. Hundreds of white and black rhinos were reintroduced by the Botswana Rhino Reintroduction Project founded in 2000. From 2010 to 2018, 7 rhinos were killed by poachers. By 2019, the rhino population in Botswana had decreased to an estimated 400, with the largest population of roughly 150 living in the northern Okavango Delta. From 2020 to 2021, 92 rhinos were killed by poachers in the Delta region, leaving only 40 individuals, prompting the government to move those rhinos out of the Okavango Delta. The most abundant large mammal is the lekwi, with estimates suggesting approximately 88,000 individuals. The lekwi, a bit larger than an impala, with elongated hooves and a water-repellent substance on its legs that enable rapid movement through knee-deep water. Lekwi graze on aquatic plants and, like the water buck, take to water when threatened by predators. Only the males have horns. The Okavango Delta is home to 71 fish species, including the tigerfish, species of tilapia, and various species of catfish. Fish sizes range from the 1.4 meters (4.6 feet) African sharp-tooth catfish to the 3.2 centimeters (1.3 in) sickle barb. The same species are found in the Zambezi River, indicating an historic link between the two river systems. The Okavango Delta is home to 1,068 plants which belong to 134 families and 530 genera. There are 5 important plant communities in the perennial swamp: Papyrus cyperus in the deeper waters, Miscanthus in the shallowly flooded sites, and Phragmites australis, Tifficapensis, and Picrus in between. The swamp-dominant species, which are usually found in the perennial swamp, also extend far into the seasonally inundated area. Papyrus cyperus reeds beds grow best in slow-flowing waters of medium depth and are prominent at the channel sides. On the islands and mainland's edges above the flooded grasslands, different communities of flora are found. These species are located according to their water preference. For instance, Phalenoptera violacea requires little water, is found at the highest elevations in the perennial swamps, and is common on drier seasonal swamp islands. Trees restricted to islands within the perennial swamp are a mixture of the palm hyphane Peters iana and acacias. The plants of the delta play an important role in providing cohesion for the sand. The banks or levees of a river normally have a high mud content, and this combines with the sand in the river's load to continuously build up the river banks. The river's load in the delta consists almost entirely of sand, because the clean waters of the Okavango contain little mud. The plants capture the sand, acting as the glue and making up for the lack of mud, and in the process creating further islands on which more plants can take root. This process is not important in the formation of linear islands. They are long and thin and often curved like a gently meandering river because they are actually the natural banks of old river channels which have become blocked up by plant growth and sand deposition, resulting in the river changing course and the old river levees becoming islands. Due to the flatness of the delta and the large tonnage of sand flowing into it from the Okavango River, the floor of the delta is slowly but constantly rising. Where channels are today, islands will be tomorrow, and then new channels may wash away these existing islands. The Okavango Delta peoples consist of 5 ethnic groups, each with its own ethnic identity and language. They are Hambukusu, also known as Mbukusu, Blukusu, Blukusu, Mabukishu, Kava, Hagava, Gsiriku, Gsiriku, Diriku, Gsiriku, Gsiriku, Giriku, Niriku, Wadii, Baii, Baii, Ye, Bugakwi, Keiko, Kwi, Kwengo, Barakwana, Gienda, and Anakwi, Kanekwi, Tanekwi, River Bushman, Swamp Bushman, Gani, Ani, Zanekwi. The Hambukusu, Gsiriku, and Wadii have traditionally engaged in mixed economies of millet/sorghum agriculture, fishing, hunting, the collection of wild plant foods, and pastoralism. The Bugakwi and Anakwar Bushmen, who have traditionally practiced fishing, hunting, and the collection of wild plant foods, Bugakwi used both forest and riverine resources, while the Anakwi mostly focused on riverine resources. The Hambukusu, Gsiriku, and Bugakwi are present along the Okavango River in Angola and in the Caprivi Strip of Namibia, and small numbers of Hambukusu and Bugakwi are in Zambia, as well. Within the Okavango Delta, over the past 150 years or so, Hambukusu, Gsiriku, and Bugakwi have inhabited the Panhandle and the Magwegana in the northeastern delta. Anakwi have inhabited the Panhandle and the area along the Buro River through the delta, as well as the area along the Boteti River. The Wadii have inhabited the area around Seronga as well as the southern delta around Mon, and a few Wadii live in their putative ancestral home in the Caprivi Strip. Within the past 20 years many people from all over the Okavango have migrated to Mon. The late 1960s and early 1970s over 4,000 Hambukusu refugees from Angola were settled in the area around Etcha in the western Panhandle. The Okavango Delta has been under the political control of the Botswana, a Tswana nation, since the late 18th century. Led by the House of Mathabai, the leader of a Bangweto offshoot, the Botswana established complete control over the delta in the 1850s as the regional ivory trade exploded. Most Botswana, however, have traditionally lived on the edges of the delta, due to the threat that the tsetse fly poses to their cattle. During a hiatus of some 40 years, the tsetse fly retreated and most Botswana lived in the swamps from 1896 through the late 1930s. Since then, the edge of the delta has become increasingly crowded with its growing human and livestock populations. After the flooding season, the waters in the lower parts of the delta, near the base, recede, leaving moisture behind in the soil. This residual moisture is used for planting fodder and other crops that can thrive on it. This land is locally known as Malapo. During 1974 to 1978, the floods were more intensive than normal and flood recession cropping was not possible, so severe food and fodder shortages occurred. In response, the Malapo Development Project was initiated. It protected the Malapo areas with bunds to control the flooding and prevent severe flooding. The bunds are provided with sluice gates so the stored water can be released and flood recession cropping can start. One possible threat is oil exploration by Canadian company Recon Africa. Initial exploration in April 2021 revealed oil deposits in sedimentary rock. Environmentalists are concerned that the project will have a negative ecological impact and that some of the main bodies of water could be threatened. Recon Africa has stated, there will be no damage to the ecosystem from the planned activities. The Namibian government has presented plans to build a hydropower station in the Zambezi region, which would regulate the Okavango's flow to some extent. While proponents argue that the effect would be minimal, environmentalists argue that this project could destroy most of the rich animal and plant life in the delta. Other threats include local human encroachment and regional extraction of water in both Angola and Namibia. South African filmmaker and conservationist Rick Lomba warned in the 1980s of the threat of cattle invasion to the area. His documentary The End of Eden portrayed his lobbying on behalf of the delta. The Okavango catchment is projected to experience decreasing annual rainfall as well as increasing temperatures as a result of global warming. The effects of global warming are likely to result in reductions in the extent of floodplains in the Okavango Delta, which will have significant impacts on water availability as well as livestock rearing and agricultural activities in the region. Thank you for watching his video.